How to Invest in Stocks, Millennial Edition. So what are stocks? How do you invest in them? What do you need to know before you get started? I'm going to give you a broad overview of how you can get started in the stock market in 7 easy steps. Now, I've probably put about 20 hours of research into this video, and I've talked to financial advisors. However, disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a guy on YouTube. It's up to you to decide what you do with your money. However, I would view this as a nice introductory, a kickstart into the world of stocks. With that out of the way, let's kick things off then with the easiest step. Step number 1, your savings account. So your savings account is an essential part of your financial journey, but it's a step that a lot of people get stuck on. This is the traditional boomer mentality of hoarding all of your money like you're a dragon trying to sit on the gold in your mountain. So hold your horses, Bilbo. We have a problem here. The problem is that banks like Wells Fargo or Bank of America and many others basically give you a 0% return rate, essentially. That's why every now and then you see a penny appear in your bank account. That's the interest they're giving you. So instead of hoarding our wealth in our savings account, what are we going to do instead? Well, we're going to treat the savings account like it's an emergency fund. Think of this like the shield protecting you from the many challenges that arise in life. Like, say, hypothetically, there's a massive pandemic that sweeps the world and plunges us into economic ruin, and thousands of people lose their jobs. Wait a minute. The point is, you never know what could happen. You could lose your job at any time. You need to have access to some fluid money that you don't need to wait on transfer times. You can have it, boom. If your car breaks or if you need medicine or what have you. We're going to keep about a month's worth of your expenses in your savings account. Next up, number 2, delete your debt. Like now, like right now. You don't want to try and make big investments if you have a large debt hanging over your head, particularly if it's high interest, like say a credit card. The S&P 500 has had about an average return rate of like 9.5% over the past 10, 15 years. And if you have, let's say, a 16% or a 20% interest rate on your credit card, guess what? You're not paying that off anytime soon. So it's time to suit up and go to battle against debt. Knock it out with the smallest debt first to the biggest debt. Anything high interest, eliminate. Now, number 3. Retirement accounts. A lot of people treat this as boring because I'm not going to retire for like 40 years, but this is actually really important for you. So if your company offers 401k matching, definitely take it every single time. Even if you're still in debt, take it, because guess what? That's part of your compensation package. Now you may be asking yourself, wait a minute, what is a 401k? So the name 401k is simply a subsection of the IRS's tax plan. It's a tax advantage account, and basically how it works is when you put money into it directly from your paycheck, you don't have to pay taxes on that money until you pull it out again when you retire. So the benefit and the thought process behind this is when you eventually withdraw your money in 45 years from now, you're not going to have to worry about paying those taxes as much because you'll already have so much money or be making so much money that the taxes won't be as big of a deal then. You'll be better prepared to deal with those taxes when you're already sitting on your hoard of wealth that we're about to talk about how to accumulate. There's also a Roth IRA, you've probably heard, and those are basically the same thing, but the only difference is that you pay taxes before you put the money in, and then you don't have to pay taxes later. Okay, next up. Number 4, stocks. What's a stock? So a stock is an investment that represents a portion of a company. You are literally buying a itty bitty piece of a big company. As a company does better and makes more money, the stocks you have with them do better. So what's the stock market? The stock market itself is just the total market for buyers and sellers of these stocks. Now, something to keep in mind, there's always an element of risk with stocks. This is not a savings account. You are not guaranteed to make money, lose money, or even keep your money. A company's value can go up or down. or they could even go out of business. And if they go out of business, you lose the money that you invested with them. So you definitely need to be careful with this one. So what are some other ways we can invest in the stock market that are a little bit safer? This would be mutual funds, bonds, and index funds. A mutual fund is just a pool of money that's professionally managed by professional investors, and they will spend time to research the stock market and try to outperform it. Now, the downside to this one is, since they're actually having to pay for people to do this, there's fees associated with it. So you get professionally managed, but you're also paying for professionally managed. We also have bonds, and a bond is just a loan to typically a government or a company. In exchange for your loan, they'll pay you a fixed interest rate over a fixed period of time. The final alternative is index funds. These are my favorite. An index fund is very similar to a mutual fund, except instead of being managed by investors, it's managed by an algorithm. And instead of trying to just outperform the market, the algorithm is actually just trying to mimic the market as closely as possible. So when the market's doing better, your investments are doing better. In return for not having actual people managing these, the fees are a lot lower. So with index funds and mutual funds and bonds, these are things that you buy and hold long term. And by long term, we're talking about like 10 years, 20 years, 40 years. And why is this? Well, this is because of compound interest. As your total investment grows, they pay you a higher return on your investment over time. When you reinvest this, it then works to further grow your initial investment, which then pays you a higher return, which then snowballs out of control. It starts off slow and then picks up speed over time. Mutual funds operate a very similar way, except instead of giving you a return on investment, they pay you dividends. Stocks give these to you as well, but a dividend is just a share in the profit. So the better the company does, the more you get paid in a dividend per share. And then so you can just reinvest this, just like with the index fund, and the snowballs are rolling. So let's play with a little example. But again, this is just a thought game, and there are no guarantees in the stock market. So here we are in the investment calculator. And so here's what I would like to point out to you. So our assumptions here are that you would start with about $1,000 invested. After 45 years, at the average return rate of the S&P 500, which is 9.54%, and assuming you did, and all you did was add $200 a month to this, your end balance would be $1.6 million, okay? Your total contributions that you would have paid into this would be $108,000. So this is out of your paycheck. That's $200 a month. This is the interest that was generated for you, $1.5 million. And this is available for anyone. There is no reason that anybody should retire not a millionaire. So this graph, I think, really demonstrates the significance of what compound interest does. So the blue line is principal, right? That's this is how much you're contributing. This is the line that you're adding to it. The black line is the interest that's generated, and then the green line is the total balance. Take a look at the difference between your contributions if you just saved $200 a month for your whole life versus if you invest it for your life. And then now you could even play around with this a little bit more. What if your additional contribution wasn't $200? What if it was $1,000? Now look how this changes. Just all we did was bump up our monthly contribution to $1,000, and our end balance after 45 years is $7.8 million. You would have contributed $540,000, and you would have generated $7.3 million of interest. And this works for anyone. Number 5, now finally we're at, how do you invest? I would fully fund your emergency fund with 1 month worth of expenses. Next, you should absolutely pay off all high interest debt before you continue saving. Depending on your expenses and whether or not you have a family, you might want to also save up an additional 3 to 6 months of expenses. This can give you some peace of mind, especially in times of turmoil or like the current situation of the world. Okay, and now we finally get to investing. Again, if your employer offers you matching 401k, absolutely grab that. Even if you're still working on your debt snowball, Roth IRAs are also good, and you should use that if you don't have access to a 401k. However, there are limits to how much you can actually contribute to these per year. Some people like to max them out, but I would recommend you avoid that. If you have a matching 401k, I would meet your employer's match, but then instead of maxing that out, I would invest in a high interest index fund. I love high interest index funds because they have low fees, you don't need to spend a ton of time researching the stock market, and they perform so well. How well, might you ask? Well, legendary investor Warren Buffett also advises people to primarily focus on index funds, and he puts his money where his mouth is. In 2008, Warren Buffett actually put out a $1 million bet that an index fund would beat the best stock picker. And someone took him up on that. Warren Buffett invested in an index fund that attempts to replicate the S&P 500, and the one he chose is called VFIAX. It's a Vanguard index fund. For 10 years, this actively managed fund attempted to outperform the stock market. And guess who won? Warren Buffett. And it was not a close call. Warren Buffett's index fund had beaten the hedge fund at 7.2% return, compared to a 2.2% return. Number 6, you might be thinking, but what about stocks? Should I invest in individual stocks? And for that, I have a question for you. Can you emotionally detach yourself from your money? If you see your money is dropping like a rock or soaring like an eagle, are you able to hold it there? If you're buying individual stocks, you need to be willing to put time into researching how they perform, what they typically do, what they've done historically, what they're anticipated to do. If that sounds like a lot for you, buying individual stocks is probably not a good option for you. Or if you're going to panic sell your stocks when they plummet, also a bad idea. Index funds are emotionless, and you're not going to have this rocky roller coaster. Now, if you love researching stocks and you spend time doing that and you feel comfortable sitting and just watching your stocks go up and down, then that actually could be a good option for you. Obviously, never invest more than you're willing to lose. It's kind of like a lottery still. So just treat it like a fun game and do your research before you buy. Time to wrap this all up with your final step, 7. Let's see the whole thing in action here. So emergency fund, invest in your 401k, invest in an index fund like VFIAX, and pick up stocks if you have the emotional maturity and time to research and study them. And now hopefully you are off to the races, you have a much better understanding of what the stock market is, and you can feel more confident putting your money into it. If you have any questions for me, drop them down below. If you think I missed something, let me know. Others might find it useful in the comments. And then obviously don't forget to annihilate the like button, subscribe, and hit the little ding. All right, guys. Peace. See you in the next one.